how are you? I'm so glad we got to have this conversation. I feel like whenever I meet amazing people, it's like we want the conversation to keep going. And I think we both agreed that we have so much synergy in what we do that we just needed to have a conversation and share it with people. So that's what we're doing. Very informal, have a conversation, and hopefully people are, in need and if and want to hear what we have to say today. But I'm Meredith, and I am a certified long-term care specialist and a connector. I really, that's the main thing. It's like I lead with my heart. I have a background in healthcare and kind of navigated and found my way into kind of like the finance space of it as well. But I worked with so many families throughout my career that thought insurance was going to pay for something, especially when something was chronic, right? And so it led me to finding resources for my clients and then ultimately earning, my designation in long-term care planning. And so I really lead with resources for first. I want to make sure that I'm connecting the families that come to me when they're in crisis with a caregiver, with a senior community, with a mortgage broker, with a state attorney, with a gerontologist, whoever they need. So that's what I like to say. Like a long-term care planner is not just about insurance. It's not just about the investments or some, scary numbers. It's really about having someone who's got your back and knows trusted people to connect you with. So you, my friend, we just chatted and I'm like, from the minute we talk, you just know those people that you like, and you trust. So yeah, I want to come from the mountaintops and scream who you are.
Well, thank you, Meredith. And it's so great. It's such a blessing when I meet someone who's in the financial services industry who isn't just looking at the numbers piece of it, but also the human side of financial planning and insurance planning. And it's refreshing when I meet folks like you. So thank you for all that you do for the families that you work with. Let me introduce myself. My name is Annalee Kruger. I am the owner of Care Right Incorporated. We work with family caregivers all across the country in helping them understand care options, understand family dynamics throughout the aging and dementia journey. We facilitate your family meetings to help you understand and go over like what's working well right now at home, what's not working well, what are the goals? The goals are usually mom and dad want to age in place at home. That's great, but how do they plan for that from a financial perspective, right? Nowadays, staying at home 24/7 is roughly $30,000 a month for one caregiver 24/7. And that's not including a nurse to come in and set up pills. That's not including a care advocate. And Medicare doesn't pay for that stuff, right? So it's out of pocket or through like working with Meredith and having a financial solution in place to help offset some of that long-term care costs. So that's what we do. We're a virtual family caregiver, senior care, dementia progression, and end of life consultancy serving families all across the country. Typically, the families who come to us are probably the same cohort of families that come to you, and they're usually in crisis. Things kind of snuck up on them and got out of control really quickly. Like all the people who had major strokes last Thursday didn't wake up thinking, oh, I think I'm going to have a major stroke. And let's just stress test our finances and stress test our family relationships. But guess what? That happened to thousands of families just last week. So that's why I'm really excited that we met and that we've had some really good heart to heart conversations about how important your piece of the puzzle is from a financial perspective, and then how Care Right helps weave all of the other professionals together as well with estate planners. We overlap a little bit because we're holistic planners, but that's what you want. You want someone who's a holistic planner because we both have a pretty massive Rolodex of really high quality curated professionals that we can leverage for our clients. And that's one of the value propositions of working together as well.
Couldn't agree more. And I think that's why I think there's so much synergy between the two of us, because when you meet someone who is really leading heart forward,
Mhm.
it shows. It shows with the conversations we have with our clients, but not only that, but I always say, I want who I refer a family to be an extension of me and vice versa, because how you are working with your client and you have this white glove, this concierge, relationship with them, it's the same thing as me. And I love it because I feel like we definitely bonded over that. And I think
Good.
the main thing that, this conversation is, these family, you don't know what you don't know until you are literally thrown in the storm. Caregiving and aging and chronic illness and injury and everything that we deal with doesn't, like you're saying, doesn't just, it's not something we're planning for. Like you said last Thursday, people having strokes. I mean, myself personally, my dad was unexpectedly hospitalized on Friday. He is home, he's healthy, he's fine. But we were not expecting it, which was his birthday. And we were all supposed to go over there for dinner. Sorry, for dessert. He was having dinner and going over for dessert, and he wasn't feeling right, you know? And so I think it hits you, especially in midlife, I support a lot of women that's kind of my heart is women in midlife. They are navigating so much with their own journey, whether it is a healthcare journey, whether it is a career change, it is aging parents, it is growing children. We're like pulled in all these different directions. So that's kind of where I come in to kind of reduce that chaos that's going on and help that individual, usually women, would just, and I kind of joke around with the little tagline, don't Google anything, call
I know.
me, right?
I know.
Because between myself and my Rolodex, and you'd say that because we know what a Rolodex
You know what a
is.
Rolodex is? I know.
Yes. Between my Rolodex, but what I love, love, love about these conversations is I now have access to your Rolodex,
Right.
because by connecting people to you, look how much further we're really curating some really good, trusted professionals. So, what do these families not know that they
Yeah.
should just know that you might be able to support them with?
So mistakes I see families make, there's a lot of them. So we don't have a 12-hour podcast scheduled, but
Yeah,
but we'll go through some top ones
we'll
that
do a series. You and I are just going to do a series.
so, so here are some top ones. Is number one, they don't understand the disease that they're trying to take care of. So most of my families have dementia. That's why they're coming to us in crisis mode because they're like, oh my goodness, dad wandered out of the house. Mom went to go get groceries. She was only gone for an hour and a half, and she came home and dad was missing. And so it usually takes some sort of like really awful trigger like that to kind of wake kids up and say, oh, I guess things aren't going very well. But they don't understand the disease progression of what they're dealing with. So they'll say things like, well, if dad's dementia gets worse, so that automatically lets me know that, our healthcare model again has dropped the ball for these families. And so that's why I started my company in the first place, is because the families are falling through the cracks of our healthcare model system, and it's uncalled for. Families are suffering because they don't understand dementia. They're grieving, who their loved one used to be as that disease progresses. So that's why we help them all the way through that dementia progression. So one mistake, not understanding the disease that they're taking care of. Number two, not having any kind of family meetings to talk about the what whens of aging. We all have to be realistic. None of us are going to get healthier, stronger, more able-bodied, more cognizant, more mobile as we age. So we might as well just face that face on and say, okay, look, the writing is on the wall that we're going to need help, we're going to need care, we're going to need to financially plan for this. So let's start doing all of this now instead of waiting until they're in crisis mode. So, not having conversations about the what whens of aging. Families not having their grab and go binder or having their grab and go information in place. So there's nothing worse than finding out at the 11th hour when your dad just had this major stroke that, oh, mom and dad didn't have any of their living wills in place, power of attorney. We don't know what their accounts or passwords are. Dad's the caregiver to mom. He just had a major stroke. Mom has dementia. He's the caregiver to mom. Now you have two elderly parents who both need care and a different level of care. And that's what the predicament is usually when families are reaching out to us. We're doing crisis planning. We're not doing any kind of proactive planning. It's all something terrible has happened. Families have to make big decisions quickly. Hospitals are like trying to get people out as soon as they are coming into the building, right? So families are always blindsided by, the discharge planner saying we're going to discharge your loved one by noon tomorrow. Where do you want them to go? And the kids are like, "Wait, what? What do you mean?" And so that's another mistake, is not having these kind of what ones of conversation. Also, and not having their documents in order, and then having to find out again at the 11th hour that parents didn't do any kind of proactive planning from a legal perspective. And now you've got to shell out 25 grand in legal fees for emergency guardianship and conservatorship, because none of the other professionals that they were working with ever like made sure that everything was buttoned up. So that's a mistake. Not having their grab and go accounts, passwords, which bills are paid out of which accounts, not knowing who the financial planner is, not knowing who the attorney is or the CPA, and not knowing who the medical professionals are that their parents see. So just all of those loose ends are
Yeah.
what people end up having to deal with quickly. Even
Yeah.
funeral arrangements. Like oftentimes when families are coming to us, it's often because the primary caregiver spouse died, and the kids are just really shocked by that. And they're like, well, yeah, she's been taking care of dad who has dementia for like the last 5 or 6 years. And the kids missed all the red flags that mom was getting burned out: weight loss, missing her own medication, missing her own doctor's appointments, or delaying surgery, or just really being clearly burned out. And and so then it gets very expensive quickly, because if mom and dad didn't do a pre-planned funeral, they've got a funeral, they're grieving, dad clearly needs care. Oh, and they don't have any legal documents in order. So that can be 50, 60, $70,000 right there, just in one foul swoop, because of legal fees for guardianship. Needing 24/7 care, like I said, is at least $30,000 per month for 24/7. And so it gets very expensive very quickly. So, not to scare the listeners, although they're like, holy crap, Annalee, you just scared us.
Right.
But
Thanks
to
a lot. We're
inform
tuning
you that
out.
this
Yeah.
yeah, that this is just how it is. Like this is how expensive care is, and this is, burials can be 10 to 18,000. I just had a family the other day, $18,000 for a funeral, and they're like, we didn't know it could be so expensive. And so doesn't it make sense to, like, let's put this plan in place sooner rather than later? And then also another mistake is they don't understand the landscape of senior care. And you wouldn't understand all of this because this isn't what you do for a living, right? But that's why we're the
Exactly.
professionals, and we know all of this stuff, and we are the experts. And I always tell families, Google will only get you so far. AI will only get you so far. There's so many nuances in all of this aging planning, that you really do have to work with a trusted professional and a team of professionals to really get the right plan in place. And so those are often the big mistakes that I see families making. They don't know the difference between assisted living and memory care, or secured memory care and alarmed memory care, or rehab and, assisted living, or Medicare and Medicaid. And so there's a lot of confusion out there, and we've not done a great job as a society of having like one place for a family caregiver to go to. That's why I created Care Right, is that one place, that one-stop shop. Let's do a comprehensive assessment. Where are the gaps in your planning? What is your understanding of the disease? Here are the different care options and how much they cost. So then we can say, okay, that's great if you want to age in place at home. But if you don't have, the finances to be able to financially support that, we also need to say, okay, what are those safety triggers of keeping you at home, like weight loss, dementia, dementia progression, and all those? What are those safety triggers that will indicate that more care is needed? But then we also don't want to break the bank trying to stay at home otherwise we financially jeopardize getting into a more quality care facility.
And there are so many things that, just listening to this as well, and I come from this space and I still learn everything, learn things every day, but it really comes from like, we are such a reactive
Yes.
society, right? So that's number one. Number two, fear. We are afraid to have these conversations. Why are we afraid to sit down with mom and dad who might be 70 or 80? But also, why are we afraid to sit down with our kids who may be younger? Like for me, like why should my kids not know my plan? I'm
Right.
in my 50s, in my early 50s. They should know mine because you don't know when anything's going to happen. So it just needs to be something within our society that we are not having the fear to have these conversations to begin with. And the third thing I was going to just mention, because I know I feel like it went resonates with me with my family is especially as you get older, but I think in general, we're always fine, right? How are you today? I'm fine. I'm good. This and that. You go to the doctor, everything's fine. Even when you're on medication, oh, and you're overlooking things that maybe are signs that
Hmm.
you just think, well, this is natural aging. I should
Yeah.
feel like this. Um,
Yeah.
to kind of bring it back to like, the women that I work with, and I have a really great community that I'm building for women in this space. Going through menopause and all that
Hmm.
stuff, I know it's different than the conversation we're going to talk about, but frozen shoulder and joint issues and all these things that I was just overlooking because I thought I'm just getting older, right? And so instead of addressing something, my hormones or whatever needed to be done, I was going to physical therapy for 2 years. So the same thing is
Oh,
happening
yeah.
for our older population. This just feels like a natural aging. Yeah, mom's getting thinner. Oh, yeah, dad, his hearing is going. There are so many things that we could be doing to, number one, prevent, but number two, listen.
Hmm.
And any advice that we can maybe give our families on that?
Well, well, I actually want to go back to the menopause thing because
Oh,
that is
great.
actually critical. Because look at the typical age of a daughter who gets thrust into caregiving. It's our age group, right? And so our bodies are already changing. Some might be in the sandwich generation where they're very busy with their kids, or maybe they have special needs kids, or maybe they have a sick spouse who has like cancer or ALS or MS or anything, or early onset
Yeah.
dementia, or all of the combination of
Illness
all
and
of the
injury
above.
is happening at all ages and stages. It's not just an 80-year-old we're dealing with.
Right. That's what I'm saying is
Yeah.
there's today is the day to start these conversations, and today is the day to start putting a plan in place because all of the above, special needs or a sick spouse or menopause, all of that impacts your ability to be a caregiver. If you're because I'm in this age group too, right? And if your hormones are out of whack and you don't have a lot of energy or you have brain fog or you have all of these other things that are going on with your body, weight, mine was weight gain and I'm like, what is going on? I've never been heavy, and then you get thrust
Eating the
into
same
caregiving.
things, doing the same exercise. Yeah.
Yeah, and then you get thrust into caregiving when you're not in tip-top shape to begin with, and you have all of these other stressors and a demanding job, or you're a business owner, and then you get thrust into caregiving, like your whole world just blows up and you feel really out of control and really overwhelmed really quickly. So all of these things play a major part into our ability to be a caregiver. And the reality is, not everybody wants to be a caregiver. Not everybody is wired to be a caregiver. Not everybody is in good enough health emotionally or physically to be a caregiver, and not everybody has that type of relationship with their parent that they want to be a caregiver.
Great. Yeah. And
So
and
there's
let's
just
even
a lot
touch
of things
on
to think about.
I was going to say, and let's even touch on that too when it comes to, the finances of it. You might have to take off work. Maybe you
Oh, you
can't
will, yeah.
afford, right? So
You will.
maybe you can't afford to quit your job and now being even a part-time caregiver to mom and dad. So there's
Yeah.
all around that. So there's one point that was just one point that if you are planning properly, one thing I say a lot is, do you want to be the caregiver for your mom and dad, or do you want to manage their care? They're two different scenarios. I always go back into stories because we meet so many people and we have our own
Yeah.
personal family stories as well. And I know that there was a scenario with a family member that, had colon cancer. And so do we want to be the one that's changing the colostomy bag? Or do we
Uh-huh.
want to be the one that's able to have that caregiver come, nurse, whatever it happens to be, hired professional help to do that for you? What relationship do you want? 'Cause a lot of people always say this, oh, we're fine, I'm going to take care of mom and dad, or I'm going to take care of my spouse. But there are certain things that just cross that line of relationship and caregiver. I think it's so important to be mindful of that and why planning is so important. So you can choose, right? You have choice.
Right. And how do you want to remember these last few years of your aging parents' lives? Angry, resentful, overwhelmed, burned out, or as the son or the daughter, and be like, you know what? We've got the care. That's what that's what we do, with Care Right. We do aging planning. We have all of this lined out and planned out. Here's it. You want to age in place at home? Great. This is here's care options. Here's how much it's going to cost. Here's different care communities. This is how much they cost. Let's do the tours now. Get you on the waiting list just in case you can't stay at
Yes,
home. Let's get your grab and go binder stuff put together so that everything is buttoned up. Because caregiving feels manageable until it isn't, and that runway is very short. Because it's one thing to take care of mom who has a broken hip and she hopefully will be back to baseline in 4 to 6 or 8 weeks, but it's a whole different ball game when you're dealing with someone with frontal temporal lobe dementia, like what Bruce Willis has.
right,
And so that could be a long disease progression, and absolutely 24/7 care is needed.
right.
And a lot of my clients, they're burning through their PTO, they're not taking their vacations. Their spouses are saying, "Look, I love you, but this caregiving to your parents is getting out of control." These emergency flights, my typical son or daughter is spending $15,000 in out-of-pocket emergency airfare every time. If you live in New York and your parents are in Arizona, airfare is not $69 on Frontier. So there's an absolute financial impact on these
Right.
adult kids. And that's out of pocket. And that's not including taking time away from work. Employers aren't as family friendly as they used to be. If you're not making your sales goals, you're out.
Right.
So there's a
Right.
lot of pressure for adult kids, or if you're a consultant and you keep missing meetings with your clients, you're not going to have any clients. Like, so there is an absolute
Yeah.
financial impact on their portfolios, but also on their pocketbook when they have aging parents and they're a caregiver.
I couldn't agree more. I think we could probably talk for
I
hours and
was just
hours.
gonna say that we could. That's why I
Yeah.
said at the beginning, this isn't a 12-hour podcast, but it
Yeah.
absolutely could be. So,
Yeah.
but
Yeah.
this was,
So,
I think this was fantastic. Like, we touched on
yeah.
so many different important topics, mistakes people make or mistakes families make with not understanding the disease, not having their affairs and documents and accounts and passwords in order, taking care of themselves, like, menopause and health wise, making sure that you're in as best tip top shape as possible, because you need to be anyway, but especially if you get thrust into caregiving, and then understanding the landscape of senior care. And also obviously the call to action is, because sometimes you have to be really obvious about what that hopeful next step is, because we've probably already overwhelmed all of these people.
You
So
know,
the call to action is, we're both here as a resource to help you. You're not in
I would
this by
agree.
yourself.
I would agree. And you know what? What I always tell people is a conversation is free. You know, reach out, have a conversation with one of us, and then we will connect you with the right resources or figure out what um, planning is appropriate for you. Because, like I said, we are both leading with Heart Forward. We
Uh-huh.
really want to support these families. My role and my job is not transactional. I don't want to just meet people and move on and meet people. I want to be part of their community. I want to make them to know All right, great. Let's say we do put some kind of planning in place. It doesn't mean that's the end. You're not, you didn't hear the last of me. I'm checking in. I'm
Right.
making sure mom and dad are okay. If I did provide some resources, making sure that everyone's, communicating and all that kind of stuff. So I guess let's leave it with that, where have the conversation with your family, let everyone
And
know it's
leverage this podcast because this is actually like my fifth podcast for the week on this very topic. So
love it.
families are, the adult kids are always like, okay, well, this sounds great. I'd love to have a conversation, but every time I've tried to have a conversation with mom and dad, they give me pushback. Or anytime I've brought up these concerning topics about dad losing capacity, my siblings think that I'm just over emphasizing that, he's fine. Well, denial will get you nowhere. And so
Down the
how to
river.
leverage, how to broach these topics, because that's usually the next question is like, yeah, I love what you guys are saying, but how do we take it from podcast to reality? Is leverage this podcast, forward this podcast on, or have them listen to this podcast where we talked about the good, the bad, and the ugly, mostly the bad and the ugly. Sorry about that. But we talked about real life in this podcast. And so leverage this podcast and say, listen to this. This brought attention to me as a family member that we're pretty ill prepared. And if you want to have the most dignified, independent, and in control as much as possible aging journey, we have to have some conversations that might feel uncomfortable. But the more that we have these conversations, the more comfortable and muscle memory it'll provide for these families. And that's what we do. That's what my company does, is we facilitate these family meetings and put those senior care plans and family relationship plans in place. So leverage the podcast. Ask your family, does this hit home for you? Do you feel like we're as prepared as we should be? And the answer should be 100% no, because I've never yet worked with a family who is 100% prepared for everything. And leverage Merridith and leverage me and our resources and our expertise.
Yeah. And then you said it perfectly. The more uncomfortable you get now, I think the main thing is they're so afraid of losing control. Like if this is the one thing that we're bringing, that you can bring this to mom and dad, they don't want to talk to you because they don't want to have control. But the truth of the matter is, unless they have this conversation, they will
Won't have any
not
control.
control.
They will end up in whatever facility has an open bed. And that's just the reality of it. Like I am a no bones, like no fluff. That is exactly what happens when you refuse to put a plan in place or don't think that it's important, which is refusing to put a plan in place. You will end up in whatever facility has an open bed. And I am here to tell you that is, you do not want to be willy-nilly with this vulnerable stage in life. Another resource, I'm going to do a shameless plug, but you can leverage my book. I wrote the book, The Invisible Patient, the emotional, financial, and physical toll on family caregivers. You can get it on Amazon. You can leverage this book and say, look, I read this, or you can listen to it on Audible. There's a lot of, it's jam packed with information that family caregivers need to know and how to self care as well. So there's all sorts of resources right here on this podcast. But this was fantastic. I don't want to keep
Yeah,
going on and on because we
we
could
could go all
easily
day.
do that.
So,
We could do
so,
that.
so obviously with the podcast, we're going to make sure that all of our contact information, what is the best way for people to contact you? And then I'll tell about me.
Yeah, the best way really is through my website, and that's Care Right Inc. So CareRightInc.com. So Care Right Inc. And you can book a call, a free 30-minute consult with me, or you can just fill out like the contact us form, and then one of my teammates will call you and learn a little bit more about your situation. And if you want to book a free call, then you certainly can.
Wonderful. And for me, LinkedIn is really the best place to reach me. Merridith Gonzalez, Merridith. So I spell my name a little bit differently. Gonzalez, Gonzalez. You can find me on LinkedIn. I do as well have a button for a clarity call that's complimentary. And then we can schedule a call to connect. And all for you menopause mamas, I do have a Facebook group called Mamas in Menopause. And we do amazing events where there's some free education, there are wellness events, there are experts that talk. So it's a really good, safe spot, which, not to go off topic, but someone just talked about like getting a hair on their chin, right? And what does, so there's some lighthearted stuff, and then you don't feel like you're alone, but then we've got some really great experts that are just supporting you all around and stay healthy during this time and reduce the chaos. So it has been a pleasure.
It has
And
been so great, Meredith. You are just an angel walking the earth. So
you
thank you
too.
for all that you do, and all the families and lives that you touch is just amazing. And it's so great to lay our head on the pillow at night and be like, okay, we did good. We did society right today. And that's why we do what we do, because it
I
matters.
agree. I agree. And with like-minded people. So thank you.
Right.
I
Thank
appreciate
you.
you.
I appreciate you too. You have a wonderful rest of your day.
You too. Bye, everyone.
Bye, everybody.